An undercover CEO noticed an overweight worker skipping lunch. But one conversation in the storage room changed everything. What he discovered left him in shock. But before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel because tomorrow at the same time, we'll bring you another powerful undercover story that reveals the hidden realities behind the institutions we trust. You won't want to miss it! Richard Oakwood stared out the window of his corner office. The sprawling city below, a stark contrast to the small kitchen where he'd started Burger Blast 10 years ago. From a single location with just 5 employees to a regional powerhouse with 25 restaurants across 3 states, Richard had built his empire on quality food and exceptional service. But lately, something felt off. The quarterly reports sat on his desk, numbers highlighted in alarming red. Customer satisfaction had dropped nearly 15% in the last 6 months. Employee turnover was at an all-time high, especially at the downtown location. Most concerning were the anonymous complaints flooding HR about a toxic work environment and management bullying. Richard ran a hand through his neatly trimmed hair, frustration building. His regional managers assured him everything was fine, just growing pains as the company expanded. But Richard had built Burger Blast on his grandmother's philosophy. Take care of your people, and they'll take care of your customers. The philosophy wasn't just a plaque on the wall for Richard, it was personal. He'd worked fast food jobs throughout college, experiencing firsthand how poor management could crush employee morale. When he opened his first Burger Blast, he'd promised himself his employees would never dread coming to work the way he once had. He'd built his entire business model around respecting frontline workers, believing that happy employees created happy customers, which made these reports all the more troubling. Something fundamental was breaking down in his company culture, and sanitized corporate reports weren't giving him the full picture. "You wanted to see me?" Thomas Harper, Richard's chief operations officer, stood in the doorway. "These reports from downtown," Richard gestured to the papers scattered across his desk. "And now there's this." He turned his laptop around, displaying a 1-star review. Food was cold, service was slower than molasses, and the staff looked miserable. "Never coming back." Thomas sighed. "We've sent 2 different regional managers to check it out. Alicia always has an explanation." "Numbers don't tell the whole story," Richard countered. "What about these complaints about the work environment?" "Unsubstantiated," Thomas said, though his expression betrayed uncertainty. Richard leaned back, an idea forming. What if I went to see for myself? Not as the CEO, but as a new employee. That night, Richard stood in his bathroom, razor in hand. His reflection stared back as he shaved off the neatly trimmed beard that had been his signature look for years. Next came the hair dye, turning his salt and pepper hair to a nondescript brown. A pair of thick-framed glasses completed the transformation. Richard Oakwood, CEO, disappeared. In his place stood Rick Miller, a middle-aged man looking for a steady job. Richard pulled into the employee parking area behind the downtown Burger Blast, deliberately arriving 15 minutes early for his first shift. The restaurant's familiar red and yellow sign glowed in the early morning light. But from this angle, the employee entrance rather than the customer door, everything felt different. The back door was propped open with a brick, revealing a cluttered storage area. Richard stepped inside, immediately noticing the disorganized supplies and sticky floor, details that would never have made it into a regional manager's report. A faded, torn poster of the company's value statement hung crookedly on the wall, the word respect partially covered by a stack of supply boxes. The irony wasn't lost on Richard as he took in the physical manifestation of neglect. This entrance, the employee entrance, spoke volumes about how staff were valued here. "You, Miller?" A sharp voice cut through his observations. A woman in her 30s with highlighted blonde hair, pulled into a tight ponytail, approached, a Burger Blast manager's uniform stretching across her frame. Her name tag read Alicia W. "Yes, Rick Miller. First day." Richard extended his hand. Alicia barely glanced at it, instead looking down at her tablet. "You're early. Good. We're short-staffed, so training will be quick. Follow me." No welcome. No introduction. Richard noted her dismissive tone as he followed her through the kitchen. The morning prep team worked in silence, tension hanging in the air like the smell of frying oil. "Jason!" Alicia called out. A lanky young man with a patchy beard looked up from the grill. "This is Rick, new hire. Show him register basics and put him wherever we need bodies today." With that, Alicia walked away, immediately absorbed in her phone. Jason's training consisted of a 5-minute walkthrough of the register system and a cursory explanation of break policies. As the restaurant opened, Richard was stationed at the second register with minimal preparation. Mid-morning, Richard noticed a woman efficiently working the fryer station. Unlike the others, she handled multiple orders simultaneously without complaint. Her movements quick despite her heavier build. Her name tag read Megan T. "She's good," Richard commented to Jason during a lull. Jason snorted. "Megan? Yeah, we keep her in the back. Wouldn't want to scare away customers." He mimed an exaggerated wide girth with his hands. "Hey, Megaton, we need more fries." A cashier with Brandon on his name tag laughed at his own joke. Megan's face remained carefully neutral as she loaded another basket into the fryer. "2 minutes on fries," she replied professionally. "Take your time," Brandon called back. "Not like you need any more, right?" Several employees snickered. At lunch break, employees rotated off the line in pairs. When Richard's turn came, he found himself in the break room with Megan and 2 other workers. The others sat together, while Megan occupied a corner table alone. Richard grabbed his packed lunch and approached her table. "Mind if I join you?" Megan looked surprised, but nodded. As Richard unpacked his sandwich, he noticed Megan had nothing in front of her except a water bottle. "Not eating?" he asked casually. "Already ate," she replied, though her shift had started at opening, same as his. From the other table, Jason called over. "Watching your figure, Megan. Little late for that, isn't it?" He exchanged high fives with his companion. Maybe she's finally realized she's a walking advertisement for what not to eat here, the other employee added, just loud enough to be heard. Richard saw Megan's knuckles whiten around her water bottle, but her expression remained carefully blank. "I'm not hungry," she said quietly to Richard. Before he could respond, Alicia stuck her head into the break room. "Megan, need you back online. Jake called out sick again." Her eyes raked over Megan's form. "Though maybe you should finish your break. You clearly take your employee discount very seriously." She smirked as several employees laughed. On his second day, Richard arrived early to observe the morning routines. Throughout the day, he witnessed an alarming pattern of targeted harassment toward Megan. When Megan bent to retrieve a box of napkins, Brandon made exaggerated wail sounds, quiet enough that customers couldn't hear, but loud enough for staff to chuckle. Another employee whispered, "Wide load coming through," when Megan navigated the narrow space behind the counter. Later, Richard found himself working alongside Troy, a muscular employee with a perpetual sneer. "See, this place has a hierarchy," Troy explained, leaning against the counter. "Alicia runs things her way. The rest of us either fall in line or get out. Simple as that." "And the way she runs things includes making fun of other employees?" Richard asked carefully. Troy shrugged. "It's just jokes, man. If people can't take it, they shouldn't work in food service. Besides, have you seen Megan? It's like she's trolling us by working at a burger joint." By the end of his shift, Richard had counted 27 different insults directed at Megan, from subtle comments about chairs breaking to outright mockery of her appearance. Yet throughout it all, she maintained a quiet dignity, her work never faltering. During a particularly busy rush, a frenzied customer snapped at Megan over a minor mistake in their order. Instead of matching the customer's tone, Megan calmly apologized and fixed the issue with remarkable patience. The customer left satisfied, even smiling. Minutes later, Troy sidled up to Megan, smirking. "Customer was right to check you. Bet you ate their missing fries." Several employees laughed, while Megan continued working, her expression a practiced mask of indifference. Richard felt a surge of anger watching this scene unfold. He'd created this company to bring people joy, both customers and employees, yet here was someone being systematically stripped of her dignity while wearing his company's uniform. The disconnect between Burger Blast's stated values and the reality of this workplace culture was staggering. How does she do it? Richard wondered silently, watching Megan methodically organize the condiment station. Her movements precise and efficient despite the emotional battery she endured hourly. Her resilience was both impressive and heartbreaking. Richard's third day at Burger Blast began with a morning huddle. Alicia stood before the gathered employees, clipboard in hand. Drive-through times were abysmal yesterday. We need to pick up the pace. Maybe if the kitchen wasn't constantly backed up, Brandon muttered. Alicia's eyes narrowed. Excuses don't sell burgers. Everyone needs to step up their game. Her gaze landed on Megan, some more, literally, than others. A few snickers rippled through the group. Megan stared at the floor. By noon, Richard had confirmed his suspicion. Megan hadn't eaten or taken a proper break in the 3 days he'd been there. When the lunch rush hit, Richard found himself called to the drive-through window. Megan was handling orders with mechanical efficiency, but her hands trembled slightly as she passed bags to customers. I've got this, if you want to take your break, Richard offered during a momentary lull. I'm fine, she replied automatically. You've been here since opening. You need to eat something. A flash of something. Annoyance, fear, crossed her face. I said, I'm fine. Before Richard could press further, Jason appeared. Megan, break time. Rick's covering. Megan hesitated, then nodded, removing her headset. As she walked away, Jason leaned toward Richard. Make sure you sanitize that headset. You don't want to catch whatever made her that size. He walked away, laughing at his own cruelty. Richard waited 5 minutes, then asked Kelly to cover the window. Bathroom, he explained. Then headed toward the break room. Megan wasn't there. He checked the bathrooms, the manager's office, and finally made his way to the storage area. A muffled sound caught his attention. Following it, he discovered a small alcove behind the stacked delivery boxes. There sat Megan, knees drawn to her chest, her face streaked with tears she was trying desperately to control. Megan? Richard spoke softly, not wanting to startle her. She jerked upright, quickly wiping her face. What are you doing back here? Looking for you. You disappeared. Well, you found me. Congratulations. Her voice had an edge he hadn't heard before. Now leave me alone. Instead, Richard sat down on an upturned milk crate. You haven't eaten, not once in 3 days. I'm not hungry, she replied automatically. That's not true. Richard's voice was gentle but firm. No one works 14-hour shifts without food unless something's wrong. Megan stared at him, seeming to evaluate whether he was setting up another cruel joke. Finally, something in her cracked. Why do you care? You've been here 3 days. I've been dealing with this for 3 years. Dealing with what, exactly? She gestured vaguely towards the restaurant. This, them, all of it. The comments, the jokes. A bitter laugh escaped her. Jokes? Is that what you think they are? She shook her head. Do you know what Brandon said to a customer yesterday? Don't worry, we keep the fat ones in the back so you don't lose your appetite. The customer laughed. Richard felt physically ill. That's completely unacceptable. That's Tuesday, Megan corrected. You want to know why I don't eat here? Because last month I made the mistake of ordering lunch. Troy took a video of me eating a cheeseburger and sent it to everyone with the caption, Feeding time at the zoo. Alicia saw it. She laughed and shared it with her friends. Each word hit Richard like a physical blow. Megan, Last week, she continued, a dam breaking, Jason told a new hire I was part of a before and after marketing campaign, the extreme before example of what happens when you eat too much fast food. She quit the next day, said she couldn't work somewhere so cruel. Why do you stay? Richard asked quietly. My mom has MS. I'm her primary caregiver. The schedule is flexible and the health insurance. It's not great, but it's something. I've applied to other places, but... She gestured to herself. Let's just say first impressions matter in food service. So you endure it. The comments, the videos, the constant humiliation. I've learned to zone out. Most days I can pretend it doesn't bother me. Her voice dropped. But some days... Like today? Megan nodded. Brandon found an old high school photo of me on Facebook. I used to be a competitive swimmer. I was fit, athletic. He printed it and put it up in the break room with what happened written across it. Did you talk to Alicia about any of this? He asked, already suspecting the answer. Alicia? Megan's laugh was hollow. Last month, I asked her about the assistant manager position that opened up. I have more experience than anyone here. Know what she said? We need someone who embodies healthy choices, Megan. Our brand is about vitality. Then she gave the job to Jason, who smokes a pack a day and can barely operate the register. And HR? HR? Megan wiped away a stray tear. The one time I called corporate, they investigated by asking Alicia if there was a problem. She denied everything, said I was being too sensitive about workplace banter. The harassment doubled after that. Message received. She looked away. The worst part is knowing what they really think of me. I'm good at my job. I've never called out, never been late. I'm the only one who can fix the ice cream machine, but none of that matters because all they see is this. She gestured to her body with disgust. So I hide during breaks. I don't eat where they can see me. I make myself as small as possible, figuratively, since I can't do it literally. Her voice cracked. And every day I die, a little inside, but the bills get paid. Richard sat in stunned silence, his disguise suddenly feeling like a betrayal. These people worked for his company, under his name, treating another human being as less than nothing because of her appearance. It shouldn't be like this, he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. As Richard drove home that night, his mind was made up. He had seen enough. Tomorrow, Richard Oakwood would return, and things at Burger Blast would never be the same. Richard spent the evening reviewing Burger Blast's employee handbook, particularly the sections on workplace harassment and corporate culture. The words he had personally approved years ago now seemed hollow in light of what he'd witnessed. His fourth day undercover began with renewed purpose. He needed concrete evidence beyond a single employee's testimony, no matter how compelling Megan's story had been. Throughout the day, Richard discreetly documented the ongoing harassment. During a lull, Richard maneuvered himself into conversation with Jason near the supply closet where Alicia was speaking with a vendor. Between you and me, Alicia's voice carried through the thin wall, I found keeping certain employees insecure makes them work twice as hard. They're so eager to prove themselves. Bit harsh, isn't it? The vendor replied. It's business, Alicia replied dismissively. Besides, have you seen the girl? She shouldn't be working at a fast food place if she can't control herself around food. Richard's phone captured every word, his disgust growing by the minute. The next morning, Richard dressed for his shift with deliberate care, but tucked his CEO identification badge into his pocket. The downtown Burger Blast was already humming with activity when he arrived. Employees moved through their morning routines with mechanical efficiency. Morning team huddle in 5, Alicia announced. The staff gathered near the registers, Megan positioning herself slightly apart from the others. Richard noticed she looked particularly worn today, her eyes downcast and shoulders hunched. Alicia consulted her tablet. All right, people. Customer satisfaction scores are down again. Corporate's breathing down my neck about it. So we need to step it up. She looked around the group, her gaze settling pointedly on Megan. Some of us need to remember that we represent the Burger Blast brand. Every interaction matters. Brandon, seemingly eager to curry favor, chimed in. Maybe customers are scared they'll end up looking like certain employees if they eat here too often. Several staff members snickered. Megan's face remained carefully blank, though Richard saw her knuckles whiten as she gripped her apron. That's enough, Richard said, his voice cutting through the laughter. Alicia's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? I said that's enough. Richard stepped forward into the center of the circle. I've spent the last 4 days watching how this restaurant operates, and I've seen more than enough. Who do you think you are? Alicia demanded, her customer service smile vanishing. You've been here less than a week. You're right about that, Richard agreed, reaching into his pocket. But I've owned this company for 10 years. He pulled out his identification badge and held it up for all to see. My name is Richard Oakwood. I'm the CEO and founder of Burger Blast. The silence that fell was absolute. Employees froze in place, eyes widening as they processed the revelation. Megan's head snapped up, disbelief written across her features. Alicia recovered first, her expression cycling rapidly through shock, disbelief, and calculation. Mr. Oakwood, what an unexpected honor. If you were planning an inspection, we would have... That's exactly why I didn't announce myself, Richard interrupted. I wanted to see how this restaurant really operates, not the polished version you present to corporate visits. He looked around at the staff, meeting each person's gaze. What I've witnessed here is nothing short of disgraceful. This restaurant has become a breeding ground for harassment, discrimination, and cruelty. He pulled out his phone. I've documented everything. The jokes, the commentary, the assignments of different tasks based on personal bias rather than your job description. He fixed Alicia with a stare. I even recorded your conversation with the vendor yesterday. The one where you explained how keeping employees insecure makes them work harder. Alicia's face drained of color. That was taken out of context. There is no context that makes that acceptable. Richard cut in sharply. Not in my company, not anywhere. He turned to address Brandon and Troy directly. I heard you make whale sounds when Megan walked by. I saw you recording her and sharing the videos with captions about feeding time at the zoo. I witnessed you deliberately assigning her tasks designed to humiliate her. The two men stood frozen, no trace of their usual bravado. And you, Richard continued, focusing on Jason, suggesting she participate in eating contests because she'd win easily, telling new employees she's a before picture in marketing materials. That's not just unprofessional. It's inhumane. Mr. Oakwood, Alicia tried again, her tone placating. We were just having a bit of workplace fun, building camaraderie. If someone was too sensitive... Stop! Richard's voice was quiet but carried unmistakable authority. This isn't about sensitivity. This is about basic human dignity, something you have systematically stripped from your employees. He straightened to his full height. Alicia Winters, you're terminated, effective immediately. Brandon Miller and Troy Spencer, you're also terminated. I will not have bullies representing my company. Gasps rippled through the gathered employees. Alicia's mouth opened and closed without sound. But, Brandon finally stammered, we were just joking around. Was it funny to the person you were targeting? Richard demanded. Did Megan laugh? Did anyone? Brandon fell silent, his face flushed with shame. Richard turned to Kelly, who had been watching the scene unfold with wide eyes. Kelly, you'll step up as interim manager until we can properly fill the position. Your first task is to document everything that's happened here, with statements from all employees. Kelly nodded, looking both terrified and determined. Yes, sir. The rest of you, Richard addressed the remaining staff, will attend mandatory sensitivity training next week. This restaurant will reopen tomorrow under new leadership and with a zero-tolerance policy for harassment of any kind. He turned back to Alicia, Brandon, and Troy. You three clear out your lockers and leave. HR will contact you regarding final paperwork. After dismissing most of the staff for the day with pay, Richard asked Megan to stay behind. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, the restaurant eerily quiet with the closed for renovation sign hanging on the door. I owe you a personal apology, Richard began, his voice heavy with sincerity. What happened to you in this restaurant, in my restaurant, is inexcusable. Megan's hands fidgeted with a napkin, her eyes still reflecting disbelief. You were really the CEO this whole time? Richard nodded. We'd been getting reports of problems here, but nothing concrete. I needed to see for myself. So all those questions, the conversations, you were investigating. At first, Richard admitted, but then I saw how you were treated, and it became personal. No one should endure what you've experienced here. What happens now? To the store? To everyone else? Immediate changes, Richard replied firmly. Starting with a zero-tolerance harassment policy that's actually enforced. Every employee will receive comprehensive training on workplace respect and inclusion. An anonymous reporting system will be implemented company-wide, with reports going directly to corporate HR, not local management. Megan nodded slowly, still appearing overwhelmed. I never expected anything to actually change. I'd gotten used to it, you know? Accepted it as normal. It was never normal, Richard said firmly, and it should never have happened. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. This brings me to you, Megan. I've reviewed your employment file. 3 years of exemplary service, customer compliments, flawless attendance, multiple applications for advancement that were mysteriously denied. He slid the folder toward her. I'd like to offer you a position as customer experience manager at our flagship location. It comes with a significant salary increase, comprehensive benefits, and a seat at the regional management table. Megan stared at the folder as if it might disappear. You're offering me a management position? After seeing me at my worst, crying in storage closets, hiding during breaks? I'm offering you this position because I saw you at your best, Richard corrected. Working with unwavering professionalism despite unimaginable hostility. Treating customers with respect even when you receive none. Showing up every day to face a workplace that actively tried to break your spirit. He leaned forward. That's not weakness, Megan. That's extraordinary strength. That's exactly the kind of leadership Burger Blast needs. Tears welled in Megan's eyes, but these were different from the ones he'd witnessed in the storage closet. These carried relief, vindication, perhaps even a glimpse of joy. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll consider it, Richard replied gently. You don't have to decide immediately. Take some time. But know that the offer stands regardless of your decision. Megan wiped her eyes, straightening in her seat as if physically shedding years of conditioned shame. I don't need time. I've been ready for this opportunity for years. I accept. 2 weeks later, Richard sat in the newly renovated downtown Burger Blast, observing the transformation. The physical changes were subtle. Fresh paint, rearranged seating, updated signage, but the atmospheric shift was profound. Most striking was the change in the customers. Satisfaction scores had already improved, with regulars commenting on the positive energy and improved service. As Richard finished his coffee, he spotted Megan entering through the front door. She was visiting from the flagship store, where she'd begun her management training. Several employees greeted her warmly as she made her way toward Richard's table. As they reviewed her policy suggestions, thoughtful, practical interventions designed to create sustainable change, Richard noticed something remarkable. Megan was eating lunch. Not hiding, not making herself invisible, just casually enjoying a salad as they worked. It was such a simple thing, yet it embodied everything he'd hoped to accomplish. A workplace where every employee could simply exist without fear, where talent was recognized regardless of appearance, where human dignity wasn't a corporate platitude, but a lived reality. Have you ever witnessed workplace bullying based on someone's appearance? The sad reality is that weight-based discrimination is among the most common yet least addressed forms of workplace harassment. In Megan's story, we see how easily cruelty becomes normalized when leadership either participates in or turns a blind eye to toxic behavior. What would you have done in Richard's position? Is going undercover sometimes necessary to discover the truth about your organization? And how responsible are bystanders who witness harassment but remain silent out of fear for their own positions? If you found this story meaningful, please hit the like button to help others find it too. Subscribe to our channel for more undercover boss stories that shine a light on workplace realities that often go unaddressed. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message, whether they're experiencing workplace bullying or in a position to stop it. Your comments mean everything to us, so please share your thoughts below on workplace harassment and how you think companies should address it. Check out our other undercover boss stories appearing on your screen right now, and we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with another brand new video.